Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you happen to be hiding out there on the globe today. Welcome to the WP Plugins A to Z special show. And just for fun, let's kick out the intro.
WordPress. It's the most popular content management and website solution on the internet. And with over 80,000 plugins to choose from, how do you separate the junk from the gems? Join us for a weekly, unrehearsed conversation about the latest and greatest in WordPress plugins. This is WordPress Plugins from A to Z.
And that's it. Nice intro, just for fun. I know not a lot of people will end up joining me live, but who knows? Some people may come into this after the fact and listen to it. What we've got here, this is Gutenberg weekend. Wordcamp US happened. Gutenberg was launched on Thursday, the day before Wordcamp, and there's a lot going on out there. There's a lot of discussions back and forth. I've had a couple of discussions on different websites myself, so it's really hard to say what is up. And I just see a few things happening, and I wanted to throw my 2 cents into the ring. And this would seem like a simple forum to do it. Since I have the forum, I've gotten the streaming working well on my computers. It just seemed like a very easy way to go about doing this. Welcome to the show, those that have tuned in. So what I'm going to be talking about here is Gutenberg and ClassicPress and some of the things that have come about from all the places I've been visiting online and the miscellaneous stuff and some of the articles that I've read. And I'm also going to touch on WordCamp's State of the Word by Matt Mullenweg, because some of it, I haven't watched it in its entirety yet. I've watched it in chunks. And some of the chunks I've watched have made me kind of cringe, but let's jump in and take a quick look at what we've got for State of the Word. And State of the Word here, we'll just go with the intro.
2018. There's been a lot that's been going on, so I'd actually like to allow WordPress a chance to reintroduce itself. It is the reason we're here.
Yeah, it is.
WordPress isn't a physical thing. It's not a set of code.
Let's skip up
It's kind of
a
an
couple
idea.
minutes here. I think this is
The
where
data in
we're gonna be.
WordPress is totally portable. You can run it just about anywhere from...
Yeah, he's talking about all the great things of WordPress and what it
robust
was.
commercial ecosystem. One that I estimate...
Yeah,
It
you can talk
combines
about how
about
big it
32.5%
is, how big the market is.
And as you may have noticed, as we were filing
Yeah,
in, we
there's
had...
a whole lot of stuff in the beginning, which is like,
It gets
no.
worse.
Okay, this is where we want to be. He's gonna talk a little bit about what he thinks WordPress is or was with 4.9, and then what it is now, or with Gutenberg. So
Something
let's
you
go.
recognize in your own experience with someone you've helped. As far as WordPress has come, I think it's good to remind ourselves that we have maybe even further to go, that we do have a lot of problems. There's been a lot of questions this year about why we're doing certain things, like why we're working on Gutenberg. And I think it's good to return always to users to find that. So we're going to go through something that is super awkward. And this is watching user test videos. Who's ever done this before?
Yeah.
For those of you who didn't raise your hands, please prepare yourself.
Like, something like this needs to be easy to use, and I wouldn't say any of this is easy to use. This is frustrating to use. This feels like writing a blog back in 2005.
Feels like writing a blog back in 2005.
Okay.
Next up.
Sometimes.
Actually, images side by side.
Now, I gotta kind of agree with this one. But page builders have fixed that problem.
We'll put the cursor here and go back, but I'm not able to.
If
do
you use
so.
something like WP Bakery, this problem is solved.
It gets worse.
Instead, I'm just going to see what other options I have.
Now, I know it's kind of painful here, so bear with me.
Let's see, so
There is a point.
Like that.
if I do a line, I'm going to. No, they're going to go right underneath each other.
add two images side by side. Why can't I do that?
You can
Well,
with a page
image on the
builder.
left now, some text on the right, so I guess
Free ones at
line
that.
right, hello. It's not exactly to the right of it. It is. Okay.
Oh,
I didn't do that. I was just hitting enter. It's not directly to the right of it, but that's about as best as that's gonna go. And then a paragraph below it. So,
Yeah, doing it in the editor, this kind of stuff is
I'll
hard.
get the
I will
actual
agree.
thing.
Can't deny that.
So we need to go back to
Nobody
that.
can
This
deny
is
that.
very finicky. This does not work.
this is very finicky. This does not work.
Nice job, Matt.
Just move this image up. Why? Why are you not moving?
You're not hitting the right spot, but that's another thing.
There's more.
I am not seeing an option. So when I go to the add media page, there's no video available for me to add.
Well, you got to upload it first.
Dang it, add a caption to the video. How would I add a caption?
Ah, but yeah, it doesn't let you do that.
No clue.
This is getting pretty painful, isn't it? How do
No,
I add a caption? I have no
well,
clue.
sorta.
I want to not subject any of us to any more of those.
Okay.
But
Thanks,
that kind of was painful, right?
Yes and no.
I've likened it before to like when you're watching a horror movie.
Okay, now watch this.
You're like,
This
"No,
is
don't go in that
interesting.
room." You see folks just trying to do nothing, by the way, that was just described there, I think a reasonable person would say should be that difficult, right? Why should it be that hard to have an image with some text next to it? We've all seen that on web pages hundreds, if not thousands of times. So when you start to try to lay things out, particularly, as you might have guessed, those were all tested with WordPress 4.9, it can be very, very difficult. There's also other things. This is a quote from a review that says, if you've ever tried to copy text from Microsoft Word and then paste it into a poster page written with WordPress, then you know it never looks right when you publish it to your blog.
Well, yeah,
Suffice it to
it's
say,
been that way for a
Word
while,
and WordPress
unfortunately.
are not very compatible. I like that little closer there.
Yeah, that's
Suffice
true.
it to say-
I'll give them that.
Well, suffice it to
No
say,
doubt.
this status quo is not good enough. And this has been our editor experience for over a decade.
And you couldn't fix the
And for
editor,
many of
okay?
us, we've gone used to it or learned to work around. For me, one of the big learning moments was when I realized just how often I was clicking over to code view from the visual view in the WYSIWYG. So I enjoyed composing things in the visual view, but sometimes I'd be trying to put text inside or outside of a link, or put an image at a certain point in a paragraph, and it just wasn't going right. And I'd be like, I wouldn't even think of it actually, because I'm fluent in HTML and CSS. So I would just, and we made the code view switcher so easy to get to, I would just go back and forth all the time. I started to just count that, and then of course of writing a post, a simple post, something that shouldn't be difficult. I would sometimes do that 5, 10 times. I bet if we looked around this room, to the most elite folks in the WordPress world, we probably have started to take that for granted.
Oh, absolutely.
So the concept that we think can fix
Absolutely.
this is blocks. So what are blocks?
And blocks are a
Blocks
great
are
idea.
predictable, tactile, can be as simple as a text block.
We'll
or
pause
as
for a
rich as
moment
an
here so I
entire
can just make my own comments here on blocks. And it took me a while to understand. When Gutenberg was first introduced, I was like, oh my God, this is just a nightmare. And I played with it and it just didn't make sense. So I put it aside again and I haven't gone back to it since. I will be back on it this week because one of the things I'm going to do is a video showing me converting my primary site to Gutenberg and see what happens, just as if somebody else did it. And as if they went from 4.9 to 5 and tried to make it work. I'm going to put a dev site up and just go with it. At any rate, the blocks, it dawned on me that the blocks he's talking about here are the exact same blocks in all of the page builders, such as WP Bakery, excuse me, the built-in page builders in Enfold theme, and I can't think of the other page builders. All the other page builders use the exact same principle, blocks. You bring in a block, you figure out what you're going to put in that block, you line it up, you move it around, the exact same way Gutenberg works. It's just not part of core. So, that being said, let's move on and see what he has to say. What else have you got for us, Matt?
Commerce interface that you can kind of zoom into when you go to a block. So the problem with WordPress and many other CMS's approach in the past with what we were calling WYSIWYG is we tried to hide everything. Gutenberg takes that HTML structure that's behind the page and makes it more explicit, and then simplifies it into the mental model of blocks, which is something that is both more apparent to people and we can reuse across the entire interface. Regardless of how powerful, like a block is, for example, an e-commerce one or a video one, or some of the ones I'll show you in a little bit, you can interact with them in the same way. They have a consistent interface for adding, deleting, and moving them around and laying them out. Let me show you some videos that are a little
Let's
bit
see what
more
we got.
fun, which is, let's build a quick little site with Gutenberg.
All right.
As Bebo Valdez, who the release was named for, an amazing Cuban musician, also the father of Chucho Valdez.
Yeah, very quick. Yeah.
We're
Okay, what did you do?
image.
I have no idea.
Look, there's some text next to an image.
Yeah, bang, 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 bang,
That was
bang,
possible.
bang, bang, bang,
Adding YouTube.
and bang. Yeah.
Found one right there. Make it a little
Yeah.
bigger.
Yeah.
A little gallery just to
Yeah, okay.
fill it out.
Okay. Yeah, really quick, easy. Oh, it looks so simple. Looks so simple. All right, we'll find out. I haven't got there yet, but we're gonna find out. Now that was, he threw that together. That was like what, 30? Not even 30 seconds. That was like 15 seconds of time. Fair comparison? I couldn't say yes. I wouldn't say yes. That was a fair comparison to the poor people who were trying to figure their way around, and just by their description, they were obviously unfamiliar with the interface. What happens to the poor people who are unfamiliar with this interface, who haven't been trained on this interface? Do they get the same, oh my God? I'm willing to bet they do. We're going to find out, because when I go to do this testing, which I'll do later this week, I will do it live. I will actually live build my dev site, everything whole live, so that everyone can see exactly what I'm doing as I go through it. So we'll see. Let's continue on. Let's see what he has to say.
Oh, thank you.
Notice the applause is very limited.
Copy and pasting has also been improved.
That's the one thing I noticed about this.
This is
This state of the word, amongst all the others I've noticed, the applause throughout the entire thing, and I haven't seen the whole thing. Like I said, I've seen chunks, but every chunk I've seen, the applause where you expect applause was muted. It was almost like less than 1/5 of the audience was clapping. And it was a packed room. And every other time you hear a state of the word, you hear massive applause, lots of hoots and hollers, but not through this one. It's really kind of eerie. That kind of gives me an idea on what the state of the mood of the audience was listening to Matt speak. So let's continue.
a Google document. Pretty complex. Got some layout, got some images, got some different things. About to Control A to select all. We can paste right there. Look, exactly what we saw works just fine.
Now, that feature there, the cut and paste, copy and paste completely from Word or any other Word type document, Google Docs or whatever, etc., I find that an amazing thing. I would love to see that working in the other one. That is the one thing that I find kind of cool here. We'll test that, but yeah, that is very cool, because I'll use that to see how that tests up against, say, my main editor I use for, say, my show notes for the WP Plugins show, which is Evernote, and I have them formatted in there, but by the time I bring them over, I got to reformat them. It's just been a given. So I'll give that a test with that one. So, all right, continue on, Matt. Off you
It
go.
works for Quip. It works for Office 365. It even works for Microsoft Word. So Word and WordPress, suffice it to say, can now work together. We also added some cool developer features that we're curious to see how people are going to take advantage of. So this is actually exporting a block. So you can take any reusable block and it'll give you a little chunk of JSON. You can then go and take that chunk of JSON, as this is a pretty meaty one, and upload that into we can import from JSON. Creates a reusable block, and then you can use that to start a page, or a post, or anything.
I'll let him run for a moment here. I got to take care of something.
In WordPress page builders. Ta-da! That's everything we just saw. So this is what we've been calling Gutenberg. It is the bulk of what we've been working on the past few years, and it's been going fairly well. We put out Gutenberg as a plugin. It started first, actually, if people might not remember, but the first few months, it was actually just purely in JavaScript, which is part of the reason it's been so embeddable and easily reused by other projects. We turned it into a plugin, kind of summer last year. Summer of this year, we started promoting it a lot more. And prior to the 5.0 release, got it to 1.2 million active installs and a run rate of about 40,000, just under 40,000 posts per day. It's a huge amount of activity, over 8,000 commits from over 340 unique contributors. And we've also been talking about it.
Sorry about that. Had kids. When you got kids and you try to do something when they go to bed, they inevitably wake you up or come in there. We're going to back up here for just a second because I missed just a couple of moments there, which are probably important. So let's go. All right, we'll continue from here. We'll redo that.
And then you can use that to start a page, or a post, or anything. Building on a common pattern that we've seen in WordPress page builders.
Look at how many clicks you got to go through just to create a great thing. Is that going to save time, or is that going to add to the time? We're going to find out.
It is the bulk of what we've been working on the past few years, and it's been going fairly well. We put out Gutenberg as a plugin. It started first, actually, if people might not remember, but the first few months, it was actually just purely in JavaScript, which is part of the reason it's been...
Now, this is interesting. He's got a 1.2 million active installs, 1.2 million posts written, 39,000 written yesterday. Okay, 1.2 million of all the WordPress websites that are out there. This is what he's basing information on. Hard to tell. Hard to tell.
So embeddable and easily reused by other projects. We turned it into a plugin, kind of summer last year. Summer of this year, we started promoting a lot more.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Release,
cramming it down our throats.
1.2 million active installs and a run rate of about 40,000, just under 40,000 posts per day. It's a huge amount of activity, over 8,000 commits from over 340 unique contributors.
That's a lot of work from everyone. Much appreciated.
Everywhere we can. At WordCamps, we've had 277 WordCamp talks on it, 555 meetup events, and over 1,000 blog posts done across the various WordPress-related things talking about Gutenberg. So Gutenberg was out as a plugin, and the reason for doing that was both to get it more widely tested and to allow the ecosystem to start to build around it.
But you didn't allow enough time.
Results there so far from themes. So we've got over 100 Gutenberg themes already on the directory. We have a new Gutenberg block tag.
Yeah, I did a lot of plugins a few months back
about Gutenberg. Themes very soon. We're launching with that 2019 theme, which
I'm not completely opposed to it. I just don't think it's the right direction at the moment.
In the WP admin. So 2019 was our idea to show off what a sort of Gutenberg native theme can do, and it's not even what's going to be able to come. People have already been building beautiful sites with Gutenberg. Here is the Indigo Mill, and showing both the sites and some of the blocks that it's using. It's paragraph block, button block, image blocks, media and text.
Just like WP Bakery. Amazing.
Custom blocks. But again, this is a site that if you were to tell someone to do in a WYSIWYG of WordPress before, only using WYSIWYG, not using a special theme, not using special templates, anything else, would have been basically possible.
Now, do you see what he just did? He clarified. He clarified that. He said, tell them to use just the WYSIWYG. Well, how many developers out there? Raise your hands. Please comment. Comment below. Please comment below. How many developers out there in the last year, year and a half, 2 years, maybe even 3 years, have built a website that didn't have either advanced custom fields, a page builder such as WP Bakery or something similar, or Elementor? How many have built theme websites without those? I bet there's not too many that have built a plain Jane, simple WYSIWYG editor. Even I've moved away from that on my own websites because I realized that I just wanted to do custom stuff. This is no different than those custom stuff. It's really what it is. All right, continue on, Matt.
Some of you might recall a few years ago, I exhorted everyone to learn JavaScript deeply. How's that been going? Huh? Who feels like they've gotten JavaScript
All right.
deeply?
We'll leave Matt here at this point here. We'll come back to it. I'm going to actually do an entire show covering this entire talk, which is an hour and a half long, which means I'm going to do a 2-hour plus show. I haven't figured out the time yet. It'll probably be later this week when my boys are at their mom's for a couple of days, and I'll do it then because I'll have the time where I won't be interrupted. So let's carry on with some of the other things I've had and talked about recently with people, and articles. We'll pop in here and bring up a couple of articles that I've looked at. One of the interesting articles that I've had here, and this one here comes from Delicious Brains, which are the creators of the WP Migrate DB Pro. Now, this is a fantastic plugin. I've reviewed it. I use it a lot. I actually first started using it with the free, and then I realized I needed the premium version. And the premium version is a pretty penny. It's like 160, 170 bucks. It's not cheap, but it's worth every cent if you do a lot of local development and you want to sync up to a live site and bring it down and sync it back. And this is a fantastic plugin. All right, enough being said there. Now, they did an article, is Gutenberg the end or a new beginning for WordPress? And they've been following the noise around it. And of course, Gutenberg is the new editor. And the problem with it, and they're not going to beat around, they're talking about, they're behind Gutenberg. I find most developers are behind Gutenberg to some extent. I'm behind Gutenberg to some extent. I'm just not behind Gutenberg as to what it's doing and the direction it's taking at the moment. I had an interesting discussion with BlogAid, which I'll bring up later. But let's go through this one here. Now, this one here, they're talking about Gutenberg as an obvious reaction to competitors of WordPress. The writing experience of Medium, the quick and easy site builds using Wix and Squarespace, which when you dig into Gutenberg, if you've used Wix, Squarespace, or Medium in any way, you can see the familiarity instantly. I saw Gutenberg instantly in Medium because I used Medium about a year and a half ago when a client needed me to do something in their Medium, and I was like, okay, I don't know it, but I'll give it a go because I'm always willing to take on new stuff. So this is it. Clearly the project the size of Gutenberg needs the strong leadership and a clear roadmap. But when that roadmap starts to be clouded by outside factors such as financial pressure to compete with the market, decisions aren't made in the best interest of everyone. And don't forget that whatever is implemented in WordPress.org is being built for WordPress.com. Now, this is something I think people forget about this. You know, Matt has been leading this. He's done a fantastic job. He's made a lot of hard decisions over the years. He's been a bit of a prick and an asshole in that period of time too, but that's what's required of being a leader. If you want to lead, you got to be willing to crush a few eggs in the process because you're going to piss people off. I've got no bones with that. Now, everything he does though, everyone think it's always for the good of the community. Well, it is for the good of the community to an extent, in my opinion. But it is not just the community he's thinking about. He's thinking about Automatic, his bread and butter, his money-making machine, WordPress.com. So everything that is done to WordPress as the core files or WordPress.org is implemented over at WordPress.com. And so that is one of the things to keep in mind. And it is the main money-making arm of Automatic. And so it's no doubt their biggest concern when considering losing customers to competitors. Gutenberg is a clear attempt to attract new users to the platform. That is their opinion. That is my opinion. I believe it in the same way. I don't blame them. if I had that kind of company going behind me and I was running, I'd do the exact same thing, simply because the idea is to benefit my business. I do things in my business that don't always benefit the community I'm involved in. I do them to benefit my business. You can ask my former co-host about that. Everything I did with my show was to benefit my business. I'm not going to pull punches on it. It's true. Just the way it is. Now, the thing about Gutenberg is it's a very advanced page builder plugin, like many premium plugins that do a similar job. And these premium plugins will eventually suffer because of Gutenberg. This is an interesting point to think about. And when you think about, okay, Gutenberg's going to come out, their eventual roadmap, the discussion I'll bring up later from Blog Aid, is got on the same vein, is that this is where it's going. And they're like, well, it should do this. Okay, maybe it should. But it's going to impact part of the community that made WordPress what it is today, which is unfortunate. All right, and so who decides what's useful on the site? Well, this is a wide demographic. In Gutenberg's case, this is clearly the benevolent dictator for life of the WordPress project and Automatic, CEO Matt Mullenweg, after confirming at the State of the Word 2016 that he was going to head the project. Through 2017 and obviously through 2018, and now we're at the end of 2018, and this project has been pushed out and forced upon the open source community. This is kind of an interesting bit. This has been forced on the open source community. They could have kept it as a plugin and then drove it into their WordPress.com system as forced in, because they have absolute control there. You know, it's always things are going to break. It's going to change things. Gutenberg is a departure from the stance. The goal of the project has dictated the need to use modern technologies, React, REST API. Therefore, it circumvents the problematic parts of core. Mullenweg views this as a positive, perhaps not willing to admit the double standard here. Well, he's never admitted double standards. He's been on double standards ever since I've been involved. I mean, one of the biggest double standards of WordPress is the fact that it automatically installs a Kismet for you, whether you want it or not. You know, it doesn't turn it on, but it's already there, which is why it's probably the most used anti-spam plugin when it's not actually the best anti-spam plugin. But that's a tale for another day. We'll come back to that one another day. Okay. Now, in this article talks about the years developers have been fighting to bring the modern PHP standards to the code base, bring it up, because WordPress goes all the way back to PHP 5.3 or something really old, and you know, 5.6 has been abandoned. 7.0 is being abandoned this year. 7.1 is going to be the minimum standard. Now, can I say I have every one of my sites on 7.1? Almost, but not quite. I have a few older sites. I just haven't got around to updating them. So it's kind of like, okay, I'm glad it's still there, but I don't have anything older than 5.6. All right, so Gutenberg installed to show what it looked like when update. They show you a little bit about it, impact on agencies. And they got the percentage of numbers of sites on the web that are powered by WordPress is often touted, and this number will be made up of a variety of different types of sites and site owners. A large number will be developers, freelancers, and agencies who have built sites in the past, manage sites currently, and build every new site with WordPress. From experience, these developers typically don't use page builder plugins, but a combination of custom fields and meta boxes to give the clients the ability to add all the data needed to display on the site in a controlled and prescribed style. I use a little bit of both myself, but it depends on what my client's needs are. The people who need to prepare for 5 to make sure their clients aren't affected by Gutenberg, this will come at quite a cost to this portion of users, and many users will slip through the cracks and remain in a broken state. High barrier to entry. Out of the modern front-end frameworks, React was always the first choice for Gutenberg, even after some token debate and weathering the storm of patent clauses. But adding a shiny new framework to a critical piece of WordPress core is highly problematic, and we've seen it before. WordPress 3.5 was released with a new media manager built with the backbone and landed without documentation, no clear extensibility model, and a steep learning curve for core contributors and developers with media-related plugins. Gutenberg has the potential to go the same way, but undoubtedly it will reduce the amount of people able to contribute to it without learning React deeply. It also places a burden on plugin developers in a short time scale to learn, adapt, and get their plugins ready. And of course, this is possible for the big guys like WooCommerce. Well, yeah, WooCommerce, who are owned by Automatic with a massive team, advanced custom fields, an independent small team, huge user base, but this will affect any plugin which registers a custom post type or meta boxes. Now this is interesting. This is going to impact any plugin that registers a custom post type or meta boxes. What's this going to do? This brings to mind, what's this going to do with custom post types that you might create while you're developing? I've got websites I've created I've registered custom post types just for that website. So I wonder how this is going to impact them. That's not something I noticed before, but this is it. You notice more the more you do this. It's going to have more technical debt, and on and on and on. So these are the things. So what are they saying here? And release version 2. So this was an older article. But this older article, if you have a site with custom post types or develop a plugin with them registered, you can stop Gutenberg hijacking the usual UI with a couple of things. They've given you some code to fix it. They talk about the future of WordPress. And so this article was back in 2017. They did do a poll here, which I thought was interesting, on what are your thoughts of the Gutenberg project? You know, and this was it. What would you like to see in WordPress? And let us know. Now, the poll was 26% said it's the end of WordPress. 31% said it's a new beginning. 43% were like, meh, whatever. Of that meh, you're going to find a lot will switch to it's the end. Now, this was something interesting when I was discussing this with someone, is that we had come to the conclusion that there was possibly going to be a 30% split in the WordPress community in what's going to happen to it. Now, you're looking at the new system coming from ClassicPress. And ClassicPress is a fork of WordPress at 4.98, 9.8. I have an inkling here that WordPress is going to see a 30% loss, which I'm willing to, well, I'm not willing to quite bet, but I believe that probably 30% of the WordPress install market is businesses, small businesses, medium-sized businesses, and large enterprise type clients. You know, I have one myself that's a larger enterprise client that I cannot move them to Gutenberg because of the way the websites are built. They have a couple of websites, have a lot of customizations, a full-on intranet, a whole lot of stuff going on there. Moving to Gutenberg looks to be problematic. It may not be as problematic as I think, but I won't know until I've got it fully tested. But just on all the bits and pieces I've seen so far, it's definitely looking like it's going to be a problem. So ClassicPress is going to be a future for what was once the WordPress community. It's going to be the new CP community, the ClassicPress community, where they're going to start with what exists in 4.98 and move from there, but not add the block editor to it. How it's going to evolve, nobody knows for sure. ClassicPress has only been around a few months, and it has gained a lot of attention this weekend, I noticed. I've seen lots and lots of tweets about it, more people mentioning it, saying, check this out, this might be your option from it. So we're looking at all of that. Okay, so Let's move on here to my discussion over at Blogade. This is going to be, we're going to bring it up here and just bring out the little bits and pieces on this. I'm going to bring up the article first from Blogade and what Mariana had to say. Now, Mariana and I have crossed paths numerous times over the years. Going back probably 6 or 7 years, we've crossed paths. We've collaborated on a few podcasts. We've been on each other's back when, what was that, Blab was on there. We were on each other's shows. We did a whole lot of things. She's been more active in the community than me. I've been focused on my family and other things. As my boys have started to get older, I have more time on my hands, so I'm able to get more and more things done. But she was talking about what she thought about WordCamp and her little bits. Now, I'm going to cover the bits from what she had at the end here and what she thought of the state of the word. Let's bring it to state of the word. She wrote quite a bit about the state of the word. She wrote about all of the other talks, and I hadn't looked at the other talks, so I've got nothing to say on them. So here's what she had to say about the state of the word. I'm sure Matt Mullenweg is used to a lot of applause during his keynote address. There sure wasn't much during this one, yet that was what I noticed. That was the first thing I noticed, the first chunk of stuff I watched. He started by stating the guideline principles of WordPress, including the democratization means. He chose to define that as everyone can use WordPress regardless of language, device, physical ability, income, location, or technical proficiency. He completely skirted democratization in leadership. Well, yeah, you got to remember, this is a benevolent dictatorship is what he's operating under. I don't care what he's doing, and his benevolence is slipping. He skirted so many key issues in both his address and the questions that followed that I think he should seriously consider running for Congress. I thought that was quite funny. Well said, Mariana. He then showed a series of user testing of the classic WordPress editor that has been with us for a decade. Afterward, he flew through doing the same type of posting in Gutenberg. The same thing I showed you, which was, he shows this painfully slow process, and then 30 seconds or less, he shows how cool Gutenberg is. Well, it looks cool at 30-second speed, but what is it really? And she mentioned, I wish to heck he would have shown is a new user testing of Gutenberg. Well, you're going to see that. I'm a new user of Gutenberg because I haven't been there for it. I'm one of the people that, as a developer, I often didn't look at the release candidates or the I want to say trials, the betas. I didn't look at the betas until it became live, and I actually had to deal with it because I'm always busy dealing with work. I just don't have that time. Again, now I have more time. I didn't have that time previously. And so she's like, no way will someone seeing it for the first time figure it out without training. That's probably true. That was followed by some of the cool blocks the community developers created, and they are truly cool. Yeah, I noticed that. There's a lot of cool blocks in there. It's kind of like going and downloading one of the add-ons for WP Bakery. There's a lot of cool additional blocks, and I'll call them blocks, for WP Bakery to really enhance WP Bakery. Another cool feature is the ability to copy-paste directly from third-party writing platform like Google Docs, including all the fancy formatting you can throw at it. Again, I like that. I want to check that one out. Matt also revealed that publishing in WordPress via mobile with Gutenberg is the next major project they will begin tackling in 2019. Okay, we didn't get to that part of it. So he later gave a preview of Gutenberg Phase 2, and that will include bringing blocks to widgets. This will open the door for Gutenberg Phase 3 and 4, when WordPress will likely be dubbed a full theme builder. Let me say that one again. Gutenberg phases 3 and 4, when WordPress will likely be dubbed a full theme builder. Okay, what is that going to do to the community? All right, well, we'll see. Historically, another feature of Matt's keynotes at WordCamp US is an overview of how much good the WordPress Foundation is putting into the world via the Do Action Project, 12 charitable organizations, blah, blah, blah. Foundation, we're going to skip over that. But he followed that by saying donations are down. To me, this speaks volumes about the lack of communication from WordPress to the wider community. All right. There are literally millions of WordPress site owners. Where is the mass appeal to them to give even $1 to the WordPress Foundation? Okay, so that's something they should even think about. Why isn't WordPress making better efforts to engage end users? There were only a few moments of applause during the address. Yeah, well, we heard those. There's hardly any at all. If you listen, I'm going to listen to the whole thing, but I'm pretty sure she's right. Those came when Matt thanked all the volunteers who developed WordPress 5.0 and for the corporate sponsorship. There was no applause for the 8,000 commits that they worked on. That's interesting. Why wasn't there applause for the 8,000 commits that they worked on? Applause for raising the minimum PHP requirement from 5.6 to 7. Okay. Support for PHP 7 will drop on December 31st of 2018, so in about 3 weeks. Okay. Matt also mentioned that during the early development of Gutenberg, some folks chose to use the star rating on the plugin to voice their opinion by giving a 1-star rating. Some folks? Oh God, you need to go look at that. That is so far down. It's just really, really quite sad. You know, and when you actually, I'm going to bring that one over real quick and just look at the ratings, because, you know, the ratings are quite interesting. We'll pop that in here before we continue. And they're still coming in. 1,073 1-star ratings, 403 5-star, and then the rest are in between. So twice as many are really unhappy. And the latest post in here, unintuitive and unnecessary. This is the worst decision ever. Simply doesn't work. Very bad decision. Horrible. Too bad. Screwed up my homepage. Not ready for release. Oh my God. These are all within the last few hours. Yeah. Okay. So, and Matt's really happy. Oh, somehow I just don't see it. Okay, he also mentioned that during the early development, he also complained that folks left long opinions in the dev chat. Some of the devs complained about that too. I really got to hear all that. After the address, there was a question about where folks should voice their opinions. Matt skillfully skirted the question by suggesting that maybe we need to bring something like BuddyPress back. In other words, not anywhere that the team leads or devs have to deal with daily. Let's hide that. There are also questions about the future of themes. Nobody point blank asked about the current theme builders by name. All Matt said was that they would have a way for current themes to opt into using blocks for everything. He also said he didn't see the need for there to be 10 to 20,000 themes in the future like we have now. Would that be like we have 90,000 plugins? Is there a need for 90,000 plugins? Well, truthfully, probably no. And considering that how many plugins I look at and how often, I would say that in the whole that we have plugins that are plugins of plugins, and there's duplicates, and the same problem with themes, duplicates and duplicates. It's not that we have 10 to 20,000. There's probably even 40 or 50,000 when you look at the aftermarket. But the thing is there are themes on a similar theme that look like each other or do the same sorts of things, but people have, they want different ways of doing things. So, and she says, read that again. What the heck does Matt think is about to happen to the current theme ecosystem over this? Where is the clear roadmap for these designers and developers? What exactly should they prepare for now to ensure that their business doesn't take the same financial hit that Yoast did with having to essentially throw out 4 months of coding because they didn't know what was coming down the pike? Okay, so she's looking at it from the point of view of, they're going to bring things down the pike. What's going to change? How are the theme developers going to deal with it? There's no way to really know. So... and they could go 4 months and then suddenly find out that everything they've done is useless and they have to throw it all out, which is what happened to Yoast not too long ago. Another question was asked concerning the transparency of the release of 5.0 and how they should better communicate going forward. The major concern was the fact that Automatic's employees did the release posts. Matt's response was they had a large team of release leads for 5, which was something different from previous releases, and that it was appropriate for the paid Automatic staff to do these publications. Matt did the final target date release post himself so he could take full responsibility for it. Okay, fine, but I don't think he really answered the question or addressed the intent of having to ask such a thing. Keep in mind, all these folks were chosen by Matt, not the community, and then the big question that came from Morten Hendrickson, who point blank asked Matt who the we was that he referenced all the time, as if a group of people made decisions on behalf of the community in a transparent way and in a way that represented the needs and opinions of the community. Again, Matt skirted the question like a seasoned politician. Well, he probably is a pretty seasoned politician now with everything he's been doing for the last 5 years. But the fact he could not escape about WordPress 5 was that the discussion and decisions were made by the release he chose in a closed-door session. This is not democratization of the community. That is top-down leadership like a corporation. And, well, so be it. He wants to have the illusion of democratization, but he needs the top-down leadership because the decisions he makes impact Automatic's bottom line. So he has to keep that in mind. Now, here's a case in point of how community designated WordPress are disengaged, how community disengaged WordPress has become, and how it's more like the government. Another private developer asked how she could get involved without being sponsored by a corporation. She is a solopreneur and cannot afford to devote the coding time to WordPress without some type of sponsorship. Matt's answer was that WordPress depends on the corporate sponsorship. If WordPress had to hire these developers, then they would have to pay for HR and insurance and all the things that come with having employees. Yeah, basically, WordPress is a bought and paid for as a congressman is by a lobbyist. That's an interesting thing to think about with WordPress. But that is a problem that ClassicPress will face eventually. Eventually, at some point in the future, you have to have a team and leadership to do a bulk of the work. And they have to make a living. Everyone has to put a roof over their head, put food in their mouth, pay whatever bills they need to survive, and then maybe get above and beyond that for toys. They need paid. This is something that's going to happen to the ClassicPress community eventually too, because it just does. I mean, even Linux and all the other Linux variations have money coming in from somewhere to keep them going, because they couldn't keep going otherwise. Bottom line, there's no place for independent developer at the table. All right, and her finalist, what democratization means to me. This is from Mayanna. The inclusiveness of community via democratization of WordPress was certainly a leading theme at WCS 2018. And yet I couldn't help thinking about who was completely left out of the conversation by everyone. There is zero representation of WordPress end users. And that's an absolute truism. That has pretty much been since the beginning of WordPress, though. The end users have always been left out. I'm sorry, Mayanna, but it's true. The end users have always been the last ones thought about. It's always been about developers, trainers, people creating websites, those that are creating websites for their end users. But the developers creating them are usually thinking about their end users in the process to do it. Okay, sure, WordPress powers 32.5% of the web. It's gone up since last time. I was always saying 30, so 32.5%. That's a large chunk. That does not represent the millions upon millions of site owners who are not in the top 10% of Alexa rankings. That's absolutely true, although Alexa rankings are meaningless. Who is speaking on their behalf? I'm talking about folks like me and my clients. Well, the same thing, folks like me and my clients also. I'm a solopreneur. I am a solopreneur. I do have employees. I have a couple now. You know, go back 3 years and I was 100% by myself and paying out the occasional to a developer to help me out, but always by myself. My clients, well, her clients, mostly food, craft food and lifestyle. My clients go across the board for everything from churches to lawyers and everything in between. So I've got a very wide variety. And I do have a few bloggers in the process. So, you know, we're all trying to scratch out a modest living using WordPress because it's simply the best platform for our needs. That's true. As far as SEO and ads and integrations with opt-ins and such, it's been fantastic. There's so much going on there. The plugins have made this a fantastic tool. And we didn't choose it because it's easy to use or cheap to maintain. Well, I beg to differ there. I chose it because it was easy to use. And it's relatively cheap to maintain. It's not cheap, but it's relatively cheap. In the basis of other CMS systems, it's cheap to maintain. And nothing in Gutenberg is going to change that. Oh, I'm willing to bet it is. I'm just willing to bet that Gutenberg is going to change how easy it is to use and how cheap it is to maintain. I just bet it's going to. And her final thing, we, the end users, are at the mercy of corporate sponsored leadership that is completely out of touch with the majority of the people it serves. True. And she's like, yeah, I can hear folks say, well, Mariana, why don't you get involved and come up with a solution? Well, I wouldn't bother myself because I'm not that big of a person that deals with that. I sit on enough boards as it is. And she goes on to talk about her trying that. She got involved and it didn't work out and that they just didn't go anywhere. And she got the distinct impression that WordPress is by and for devs, not the end users, unless they are corporations. And that's where the money is. The money is also in corporate sponsorship. They make their big bucks off those same little end users. And you can take a look at the diamond sponsors of the WordCamp US event, and she's probably right there, and I'm going to take a little dive into that. We're going to take a little dive into that, sponsors for the WordCamp US event. Here we are. Let's bring that over and take a peek at that. Diamond sponsors, Jetpack. Oh, Jetpack. So Automatic sponsored that. That was Automatic. Bluehost, one of the worst hosting providers in existence. Google, well, okay, Google's jumped on the bandwagon. They finally made connections with them. WooCommerce, well, WooCommerce is Automatic. So, okay, let's take a look. She said take a look at the diamond sponsors. These are diamond sponsors for WordCamp 2018. These are the top tier sponsors. Automatic, WordPress.com, Bluehost. They've been partnered since way back. And there's an article I caught about their partnership. You know, that's irrelevant in my books. It's still Google. So they got Google on board. And then WooCommerce, which is owned by Automatic. So Automatic, 2 of the 4 diamond sponsors were themselves. Platinum sponsors, SiteLock. I'm not sure who is SiteLock. Oh, SiteLock is AIG. God, they cram it down everyone's throat. Every AIG platform that I pull a client off of, I'm thrilled, and they always have SiteLock. They're paying for something that's never very good. WPMU Dev, woohoo! Way to go, guys! They're platinum sponsors. All right, they're independent. DreamHost, another hosting company, nickname Nightmare Host. GoDaddy, well, GoDaddy's good, fantastic for registering domains. Best domain registrar on the planet. Hosting, meh, not so good. SiteGround, go. You just go to ground, man. Just go to ground. WP Engine, again, if you like managed platforms, enjoy yourself. And limitations, yeah. And every time I've had to deal with WP Engine, yeah. And at one point, they almost talked me into sponsoring my show, and the negotiations didn't go so well. So they ended up not doing it. They're really good for other things. Green Geeks, they used to be a fantastic hosting. I used to recommend them all the time, but then they started going downhill. I don't know if they've changed. I hope they're still independent. I really don't know much about them anymore. They drive. Jilt, who's Jilt? Jilt is an email marketing tool. Never heard of them. Jilt, it kind of reminds me of being jilted. Plesk, oh God, never Plesk. Plesk, make me choke. Big Commerce, never heard of them either. Me, personal domain. Oh, okay. Yoast Academy, all right. Pathlon, website operations. Emotion Hosting, again, another hosting provider. Flywheel, PayPal. They got PayPal. Nice work, guys. PayPal's good. They work. GoWP, Bold Grid, GiveWP, QuillPay, Nestify, Themium, Prosperous, WP Buffs, HubSpot, WordFence, okay. BuddyPress, that's again automatic. So let's bounce out of there. All right, so we've got a lot of them here that are all automatic companies. All right, and just take a look. And she hopes Morton's project helps democratize the WordPress leadership. What is Morton's project? Would have been nice if she'd left us a link to that. What is Morton's project? The Chambers project. Paints and stretches lines. No, we won't be able to find it. This is something I'd have to do a digging for. So we'll have to figure out what that. That's the one guy that asked the question. I haven't seen anything about his project to help democratize the WordPress leadership. How do you democratize the WordPress leadership? How do you fire Matt Mullenweg from the project? He owns the project. It is his project. You know. Okay, and she's like, I hope the bad taste in everyone's mouth about how Gutenberg, I'm not even going to call it WordPress anymore, it's Gutenberg, was rammed through and released in an untimely manner helps reshape the leadership structure. I hope the bad taste in everyone's mouth about how Gutenberg was rammed through and released in an untimely manner helps reshape the... Oh, okay, I get it. Helps because I hope that. Okay. But I have no hope that you and I and the millions of other solopreneurs and small business owners will ever have our voices heard nor issues addressed by the WordPress leadership. My online business is based on helping you be successful with your online business no matter what comes down the pike with WordPress. And this means I'm going to start looking at WordPress the way I look at other corporations like Microsoft and Apple. I don't feel like I'm part of their community. I need what they produce, but I have no say in what it is. I am just an end user, and I take it as it comes and make the most of it. My community is you, the end user, the site owner, and I'm listening to you and addressing your needs. Okay. And she does. She does a really great job of it. She's really right in there helping you out. I do the best I can with my community. As my time gets better and bigger, I will be addressing more and more things as they come down the pike. I'll be doing things such as this live thing, which doesn't go into my podcast feed because the podcast is reserved for two things: the WP Plugins A to Z show, which is on Thursdays at noon live, or catch it from iTunes or Stitcher or any of the other number areas, and then the interviews, which I do with developers out there. And I'm going to continue doing that. I'm going to continue being a part of the WordPress community as long as it exists. I just may end up splitting some time between WordPress and ClassicPress because I may have to go that way with one or two of my sites. And I may have clients coming down the pike that the best option for them will no longer be WordPress, but it might just be ClassicPress. So this is going to be an interesting time. So anyway, back to now on to my discussion with Mayanna and what happened, because I left a comment on our site. And the comment was simply, nicely said, But I do not think, nicely said, but I do think that a large chunk of the community may end up moving over to the ClassicPress.net fork of WordPress, and that may be where the theme devs have to go. And Mariana comes back and says, I don't know, John. Such a tiny sliver of folks have even heard about the fork, and since we can run WP sans Gutenberg, I think most folks will just turn it off for now. She's right in that aspect. A tiny sliver have heard about it, but that sliver is growing really, really big. It is like the thin edge of the wedge has been shoved in, and now the hammer is pounding on the wedge. And so I said back to her, but since WCUS, the number of people finding out is growing, and I only caught wind of it in the past week. I'd heard rumors about it, but did not see it until recently. And I think it won't be long until Gutenberg is completely forced onto everyone who goes past 5.0, meaning WordPress 5. The drive for making WordPress a site builder seems to be strong. Okay, and it's mentioned, she even mentioned that it's a drive to make it a site builder. Many people have mentioned it. They're not comprehending what it's going to do to the community. And then she comes back and she said, I had posted about it in Tips Tuesday when it first started, and I have been following the progress. I think it's a good idea for WordPress to become a full site builder. I'm not so sure about that. With Classic Editor being supported through at least 2021, I don't see that Gut will be forced on anyone. What I do see is that the greater WP community of devs will keep moving forward with Gut, and that folks who don't make plans to go in that direction in the next year or so will just get left behind, as that's where the focus of development will be, not on what's going to eventually be old school web. To me, the fork is more of a reaction to the current leadership of WP, WordPress, more than a real need to split the dev community or not to endorse Gutenberg in the long run. Okay, so I had one more callback to this. And it was a rather lengthy one because I thought this one out for a bit and wrote it out. As the fork may have been initially a reaction to the lack of communication and the ramming it through too fast, but I do not think so any longer. There is looking to be a split in the community. I would guess up to 30% or more by the time the dust settles. I will probably have to be in both camps for a while, since I have enterprise-level clients with no easy way we can move their sites to Gutenberg, as the editor looks to be making a mess of things, and I have smaller ones who will fare just fine under Gutenberg. This was not an advancement for everyone using WordPress, but an advancement focused at the users who needed more simplicity. The ones Automatic was losing market share to Wix, Squarespace, etc. on the WordPress.com platform. But so be it. After all, WordPress was born out of frustration of B2 cafe log software, and it was a few years until people discovered it. The same may happen with the ClassicPress fork, although this could move faster, as they are already listing up the plugins that will continue to work with it. I will be adding it to my show, WP Plugins A to Z, in the coming months, or the coming weeks. I only see the bigger WP dev companies completely staying with Gutenberg, as their fortunes are tied into the WP community. It should have been in its current form. The smaller ones, or up-and-coming ones, may look at the opportunity to service the newly developing community at ClassicPress. As for being left behind, I do not think so. As new opportunities are opening up, so the new path may prove more beneficial. It does not look to be old-school web if they get this stuff off the ground, as they are looking to fix many of the problems with the core that WordPress has not been dealing with. The Classic Editor may be supported through the end of 2021, but that is only 3 short years away. Then what? It's a good question. Then what? Then Gutenberg's crammed down your throat. completely. By then, if ClassicPress takes off, it will have begun to evolve in its own direction. I believe we are in for some interesting times. As Matt saw at his State of the Word and the lack of audience approval, the community is not happy right now, and unhappy people begin to look for ways to change it. Change has happened before in open source communities. It can happen again. And then she had a final response to me because I didn't respond after this because I didn't want to carry this on forever because we could have gone back and forth forever. And her final bit was, years ago, during the launch of Calypso, I called for a split of WP, one for WP.com users and one for WP.org users. Thank God Calypso didn't get forced on .org users. And I vaguely remember, I couldn't remember what Calypso was. I had to go look it up. Calypso was the new platform on WP.org that helps you manage all your multiple sites. You can log into one site and be logged in across all of them. And when you look up Calypso stuff, you still had to use Jetpack with it to make it even worse. So yeah, I'm glad it didn't get crammed down our throats, but they couldn't do that and still claim the high moral ground, because they'd be forcing Jetpack, which is their premium plugin system, which has dozens of plugins in it now. It's the bloated plugin from hell. Okay, and she's like, I believe this is finally that split, which contradicts some of her stuff up above from me. But as I stated in my article, me and my clients did not choose WP because it was easy to use or cheap to maintain. True. We have a need for what else it offers that platforms like Wix and such don't. True again. But that's not who they're going after. There is nothing about ClassicPress that will change those two things, no matter how many issues they address that have been overlooked. Actually, I think there is, because ClassicPress is going to address and keep WordPress in its fully functioning format and allow you to keep expanding, doing the things that Wix and others don't perform. It's not going to give you the block editor, but the block editor is taken over by using a page editor of sorts. There is nothing about it, and I predict that keeping that base way of doing things for enterprise-level clients will lead to the same situation that many corporations faced with having to stay with an old version, i.e. for their intranet. I think she got a trouble here. I predict that keeping that base way of doing things for enterprise-level clients will lead to the same situation that many corporations faced with having to stay with an old version of IE for their intranet use. Typo. All they did was postpone the inevitable of a costly rebuild. I don't believe that's true entirely, because if we've got a WordPress base that is keeping up the core files and the security and still adding the functionality that's needed, you can bring it along quite nicely and keep advancing it up forward to the latest PHP and everything else along the way, the same way WordPress has been going. Like my enterprise clients, we've brought them along from WordPress 3.7 or 3.6 when they first became clients. So we've come a long way, and over the ways we've advanced the servers, we've advanced PHP, we've advanced stuff inside it, we've rewritten plugins, we've updated, we've customized. But on the whole, but it's been on the whole base of WordPress being built and being maintained. This change to Gutenberg, forced in the core, changes the base functionality of the software. It doesn't just change, it changes the base functionality of the software, which is so much more. So this is something to think about in here. All right, and so that's the thing. I don't think it's postponing anything. And if ClassicPress can keep and maintain and move it forward, it just evolves from a WordPress site to a ClassicPress site with all the plugins along the way. It evolves. It's not like back in the days when, oh yeah, they built it for IE and nothing, and they couldn't work on newer software. This is different. I wanted to do that, but I just didn't want to carry this thing out. And then she's like, I do believe that there are millions upon millions of site owners who will be good with what Gutenberg promises to become down the road. I base that on my own clients and the popularity of theme builders. I also base that on emerging tech like VR and other platform design that will meet the needs of the future web. Yeah, maybe. I also have never felt okay about the split. split CP ClassicPress has caused in the community, and almost forcing devs to choose sides in a way. Well, it is. I do have my ideas about that. It's kind of sad that it's going to force a split, and devs are either going to have to choose a side or figure out how to maintain both. I'm much more on board with the vision that Morton, Yoast, and others have expressed about working from within on a change in leadership structure. I don't see how leadership structure is going to change anything. Gutenberg's been committed. It's already done. Leadership structure is not going to change that. They're not going to reverse these decisions. It's like getting a new board of directors. When an old one has fucked up a lot of things, you're not going to completely reverse all the old decisions. So, and she agrees with Mortenson's assessment of WordPress having enough users to flip a switch and change the web. I don't really understand what that is. I can't find that bit. I wish I had a link to go to see that. I don't know what she's talking about there. You know, Morton's assessment of WordPress having enough users to flip a switch and change the web. That is where the influence will stay. It's also where my clients will stay, so that's where I'm staying for now. I honestly don't need to concern myself with what enterprise level site owners need. That's not who I serve. Well, that's true. If you don't serve enterprise level, you don't have to worry about it. Some of us do, so we do have to worry about it. And there's a lot of us out here that do. So anyway, that's it. That's my rant for this evening on Gutenberg and State of the Word and et cetera, et cetera. We've been traveling for over an hour. Thank you very much for the 2 people who showed up and the occasional 3rd person who popped in here and there. And don't know who you are out there, but I'm impressed that you hung in here for the full hour. Thank you very much for listening and watching the show. Hopefully you've subscribed to the channel. And be sure to tune in on Thursdays at noon to watch the WP Plugins A to Z show live. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast to get the interviews. And one of the things I think I'm going to do with those interviews is, while they'll go to my subscribers, I think I'm going to look at putting them into my Patreon as unique content for my Patreon subscribers. Actually, I might not even use Patreon after some of the things that have happened this last week. I might go to the other one, Star Search or something. I forget what it's called. There's a new Patreon type platform because Patreon has been doing silly things. So, that being said, that's all I've got here this evening. Thanks again. Thanks for popping in. Quick note. Thanks for listening to the show. Y'all have a good night. Take care now. Bye-bye. Let my girl play us out.
Reminders for the show. All the show notes can be found at wppluginsatoz.com. And while you're there, subscribe to the Friday newsletter for more useful information delivered directly to your inbox. WP Plugins A to Z is a show that offers honest and unbiased reviews of plugins created by developers because you support the show. Help keep the show honest and unbiased by going to wppluginsatoz.com/donate and set the donation level that fits your budget. Help us make the show better for you by subscribing and reviewing the show at Stitcher Radio, Google Play, and in the iTunes Store. You can also watch the show live on YouTube, check out the screencasts and training videos, and remember to subscribe and hit the bell to get notifications of all new videos. Also, follow the show on Twitter at WP Plugins A to Z. John can be reached at his website at johnoverall.com or send him an email, john@wppro.ca. Thanks for joining us and have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the show. This show is copyright by johnoverall.com. So until next time, have yourselves a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you happen to be out there on the globe today.